Joe Kashurba has gone from freelancing rock star to big-time entrepreneur. He started a freelance web design business in high school and has now turned that into a digital agency with clients around the world. He builds $30,000 websites, manages six-figure digital advertising budgets for huge companies, and he mentors freelancers on how to develop and scale their businesses, which obviously he knows a lot about. Joe, hope you don't mind that introduction. Welcome to Get Rich Freelancing.
That sounds great, Josh. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Let's jump right into the plug. What's the best way to plug your service and tell freelancers about how to get in touch with you?
Well, yeah, absolutely. We have a program where we help freelancers, anybody doing web design or digital marketing or anything like that as a freelancer. And the website for that is agencyaccelerator.guru.
Agencyaccelerator.guru, and we'll put that up on my website as well. And is that specifically for web designers, or who would that be appropriate for?
Yeah, it would be appropriate for sort of anybody in the web design and digital marketing space. We work with anybody from freelance web designers to agencies that do branding and digital marketing and things like that.
Excellent. And digital marketing space and the freelance digital marketing space is exploding. It used to be that to be a digital marketing agency, you needed a lot of resources, and these days you could pretty much do it out of your basement if you have the right equipment and the right connections.
Absolutely.
Let's get it right into that. There is a little bit of competition, or maybe a lot of competition, that the web designers, that modern-day web designers have to deal with in terms of the tools out there that a non-designer can use. For example, basic website builders like Squarespace. How would you tell freelancers out there, web designers, how should they compete and how can they compete with tools and resources like that?
Absolutely. That's a good question, and that's a question I get a lot, that people say somebody can go on Squarespace, or in the digital marketing space, somebody can hire Yellow Pages or Yodel or one of those companies to do their digital marketing. How do we compete? And I think the answer starts with that you have to specialize. It's no longer hiring a web designer or freelancer is no longer the easiest and cheapest way to get a website. It's just not anymore. So we have to get away from being a generalist that sort of sells those services and being someone that specializes. And specializing means that we are offering specific benefits to specific ideal clients.
Right.
So you're not selling a website so much as we're selling whatever the result is, like lead generation or something like that. That's
excellent. And I'd ask you for specifics. As you say that, I'm saying to myself, when QuickBooks came out, did the CPAs all suddenly go out of business, and did the accounting schools just say, all right, close up shop, guys, we have a software that'll do your taxes? Yeah, probably 70, maybe even 80% of people can do their taxes with QuickBooks. But you know what? There are millions of people out there who either can't or don't get the right mileage out of QuickBooks, who are going to hire CPAs and pay them a ton of money. And you can apply this. LegalZoom.com, maybe the lawyers should be put out of business. And the answer, I think, is very similar to what you just said, that there are many, many, many people out there who need customization, and they just can't use one of these sort of one-stop shop softwares. Do you have some specific examples of specializations?
Well, yeah, let's see, a couple different examples here. So you can sort of go in a couple different directions. Some people will niche down on a specific industry. Somebody might know a lot about law firms or a lot about restaurants and focus just on getting those kinds of clients. And when you specialize in doing websites for restaurants and you know everything about the restaurant industry, it's hard for somebody who's a generalist to compete with that. So that's one way. Another way to do it would be to specialize on a specific situation that the potential clients are in. So, in the agency side of my business, we really help people generate leads. We work with a lot of construction companies and contractors and people that want to generate a lot of leads through their website. And so we're less focused on niching down on a specific industry, but focused on getting that very specific result that they want, or that very specific situation that they're in, which is that they don't have enough leads and enough phone calls coming in. So that's another example.
That's very cool, and that's a great example. Obviously, there's enormous value if you can go to construction companies, and it's a competitive industry, and if you can say to them, that you have approaches and techniques to get them leads and to be able to use their website to attract leads in an automated way, then obviously that's exponentially more valuable than going on Squarespace or any of the other web building tools. And sure, you can design your own website, but that's not going to help you bring in leads. You're not going to nearly have any sort of those resources that you can provide them.
Exactly. And they're not even, when we're talking to a company like that, and we're talking about generating leads and that kind of thing, they're not thinking about, should we hire them or should we hire, build it with Squarespace for $10? Because they're not thinking, it's almost to the point where they're not even thinking about the website so much as they're thinking about the result that they want, which is lead generation.
Oh, okay. Excellent. I'm glad you're bringing that up, because that's really, I think, when we talk about positioning, and I think this is something that a lot of freelancers, I don't know if they miss this, but I think from my own personal experience as a freelancer, we don't put enough emphasis on positioning. We think, all right, there's so many freelancers out there, and there's writers and designers, and you just shifted. It was a subtle shift, but it's so fundamental. I'm not a freelance web designer. I'm somebody who's going to get you leads. So it's the old, the guy doesn't want a drill, he wants a hole, which everybody kind of says over and becomes cliche. If you're somebody who makes a web page, well, the construction company is thinking, I can get a web page anywhere these days. But if you're somebody who's going to bring in 50 or 75 or 100 leads a week or 100 leads a month, then the website is not the end product. The website is just the vehicle, the means to an end.
That's exactly right.
So, all right, great. I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you. And I really want to get into your specific story for a lot of reasons, but mainly because it sounds so fascinating that you start off as a freelancer, you obviously build it into this incredible company. Can you just sort of walk us through your story from the start?
Yeah, so I started doing freelance web design when I was still in high school. The first client that I actually worked on was the photographer that he was actually one of the first couple clients I worked on. The photographer that did my senior photos needed a website, and so I did a website for him for about $300.
I love it. And how did you did you just code it from scratch?
At that point, it was designing it in Fireworks. It's Adobe Fireworks now, but Macromedia Fireworks, I think it was called then. Designing it in Fireworks and then cutting it up into HTML and CSS with that, and using Dreamweaver at that point.
And you just taught yourself? I mean, how did you figure this out?
Yeah, actually, I started. That's a funny story. My business really started as sort of a video production business, where a group of my friends had a band, and so the first business thing I ever did was I filmed them playing at this local restaurant, and I sold videotapes of them playing to their parents.
Wow.
And so then I wanted to get other video production clients and set up a website for that purpose, and then people started coming to me looking for websites, and it sort of morphed from video production business to doing web design.
And what's cool about it is, and I want to get back to your story in a second, but you clearly just had this like entrepreneurial blood in you at a very young age. Most high school kids are playing basketball and, I don't know, smoking in the halls, and here you are basically itching to build a business.
Yeah, absolutely. My brother still mentions when I was in, I think, second grade, they did this thing where they asked everybody what they wanted to be when they grew up, and I said that I wanted to own a cheese factory.
There you go. That says it all. Well, you don't quite do that, but actually much better. Now, all right, so you have this photography website that you set up for this photographer. You're basically finding people in high school around you who you can offer your services to. Where did you go from there?
Well, yeah, it was something I did sort of on the side in high school and college, just doing sites as things came up from referrals and word of mouth and everything. And then towards the end of college, I was involved in a startup company and with a few other partners. And my plan after college was to do this startup company full time, and like literally while I'm studying for finals, this startup company falls apart. And so I ended up graduating college with no job lined up and no startup company, and the only thing I had was that I was doing freelance web design, and I sort of had to make it work.
Wow. I love that story where you had to make it work. So many success stories come from, the old necessity is the mother of invention, but it's just so true. So you had to make it work. So yeah, what did you do to make it work?
Yeah, I mean, so I moved back in with my parents, and I had friends. I have a degree in information science and computer science, so I had friends that were getting jobs at Amazon and places like that. And I moved back in with my parents and sort of put together this makeshift desk in my mom's basement, literally out of like 2 bookshelves that I put something across. That was my desk. And
sorry, Mom, you're gonna have to do the laundry somewhere else.
Yeah,
I need my office space.
There. It was pretty funny. So, then I just tried everything I could think of to get clients. I mean, I put ads in the newspaper, and I did all kinds of things. Eventually, I started getting some clients on Elance. And
all right.
Yeah, getting clients that way.
I got my start.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's where I started. That's where I got my start. Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Good. Now, of course, it's Upwork, but it's pretty much the same website with a few differences. Yeah, and you continue?
Yeah, so I started getting some clients there, and I got some clients locally. I kept going to different networking events and all this kind of thing, and it was just a struggle. Some months I'd make $1,500, and having a full-time job just sounded like so much money. And then every once in a while you have a really good month, and then the month after that it would be terrible again. I just felt like I had no control over getting clients. And
right. And 1,500, just to clarify, 1,500 you're saying was a bad month.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, compared to
some would consider that okay, by the way. But I understand you had friends who were these professionals in the corporate world, making 3 times that, 4 times that. So I get your point.
Yeah, I was looking at people that all the people I graduated with were getting jobs and everything. And so, I remember I had one month that was totally crazy, and I made $11,000. It was the first $10,000 month I ever had. And I thought that I was just like, I was on top of the world. I thought this was, it was going to be like that forever. And the next month I made $1,200.
Wow. Yeah, and that's the nature. I think that's an extreme, and that was a great month. But every freelancer has definitely felt that plateau where you're kind of on the high and then the low. That's certainly the nature of things. Was there some sort of tipping point? Was there some point where you just hit a much more consistent? I mean, obviously you did at some point, but can you describe that?
Yeah, I think the two things that really pushed me to that point was starting to learn marketing and really diving into marketing and copywriting and marketing strategy, and then also starting to hang out with and get mentorship from other people that had successful web design agencies and were doing successful freelance work.
Interesting.
And starting sort of seeing some of the mistakes that I had been making. And I think the whole thing they tell you about the people that you hang out with, is a good barometer of your income and things like that. There's a lot to that, because I was thinking I was charging a lot and doing good projects, and then I'd start hanging out with somebody that was charging $5,000 or $7,000 for a website when I was charging maybe $1,000 at that point. And just sort of it being in that environment pulled me up. So I think that was a big piece.
That's really interesting. That's a great point, and it sort of expands one's horizons. I know that I've had times when I thought that a certain hourly rate seemed like a really, really high and outrageous, and then I would discover there were people probably not even as talented as me or some of my friends who were like charging more than that, and not just charging, but were actually getting it. I said to myself, I'm really missing out. So that's a really interesting factor that maybe we don't think about, that if you're in a certain atmosphere where people are thinking low, that's not very healthy, and it's probably better to sort of rub elbows with the people who are charging a lot more, especially if you can offer the same kind of value they do.
Exactly, because I think a lot of the people so much of the time just make up their prices, and the idea that nobody would be willing to pay more than that is just a limiting belief, that you have to sort of have the experience to see that people are willing to pay more, and then you just have to test it.
Well, right. Okay, great. And testing it, that's another good point, because I always say to myself and tell other people, what's the harm, unless you're starving and unless you're desperate, in which case you're probably not going to succeed anyway with that mentality. What's the harm in taking it up a notch and telling clients, hey, here's my rate? They can negotiate or they could say no. But I always feel like the people who really are able to raise their rates consistently and really make a lot of money are the ones who are willing to test out those waters and sort of go way above their aspirations and say, you know what the heck, let me just go for it, let me ask for it. What's the worst that can happen? There's lots more clients out there.
Absolutely. I mean, I always loved this story. I was this was still when I was sort of just doing the freelance work on the side, but it was in college during finals week. Somebody contacted me about a website, and I was just so busy at that point I really didn't have time for it. And at that point I was usually charging about $700 for a website. And so just because I was so busy, I decided I'm going to tell them it's $1,800 just because I don't have time for it. And they ended up buying. And so I more than charged more than twice what I usually did just because I didn't really have the time, and they bought, and the whole process was the same as normal, and I was just shocked that I could charge so much more than I had been.
Right, and it's sort of the old classic supply and demand.
Yeah.
And they needed you and you didn't need them, but that is just amazing stuff. So I guess I want to try to get ultra specific. I mean, this is amazing story, every step of it. Before we get into sort of your advice, which we're going to get to soon, your advice to freelancers who are starting up these days, what I do want to know is at the point when you were sort of really getting into your groove, and you mentioned something. You mentioned that you were sort of following up on leads from a lot of sources. On the one hand, you were online, you were on Elance, you were also networking and doing in-person. Obviously, you were getting referrals, you were building up a network. Was there one or two sources where most of your leads, most of your business was coming from, or was there multiple? I want to really get a picture of where you were getting your clients.
Yeah, the biggest marketing channel that really blew things up, that we still get the majority of our new leads in from, is Google AdWords.
Really? I mean, I know you're a big Google AdWords guy, but you found and find your own clients that way.
Yeah, that was the main thing that got that strategy right and got everything dialed in with that, and then could crank that up to the point where we could get leads every day. And the first time I actually started doing Google AdWords and we got it right, we ran it for like 3 months and then had to turn it off because I couldn't handle all the projects.
Wow. Okay, so let's get into this because I have a lot of questions about Google AdWords. I guess my first question is that I think the stereotype is that if I do a Google search for web design and I find a web designer in a sponsored Google AdWords ad, I'm saying to myself, this is not necessarily high-end. You're talking about, pretty high-end design and high-end rates, premium types of clients. I'm thinking that, maybe the guy looking for a sort of a cheaper deal, he'll go to Google AdWords. Maybe people will spend a couple of bucks on Google AdWords, but to just find some random Google AdWords ad and to turn that into a very large project, I would have thought is uncommon.
Well, I guess I'll say two things about that. The first thing is, I'm not sure if this is exactly what you're asking, but people ask this a lot. They say, well, don't people know that those are sponsored ads and that that's not necessarily the best person in the area or something like that?
Right. Yeah.
And the reality with that is that most people out there still don't even know what Google AdWords is or that those are paid ads.
Really?
Yes.
I find that very surprising. I mean, I guess I'm a web guy, I'm a copywriter, but obviously I'm a web guy, so I'm familiar. But don't they say sponsored links?
Yeah, it says ad right in. Well, now it's in green as of a couple weeks ago, but it used to be yellow. But people don't realize that. And the biggest thing that shocked me is when I started most of the ads I run for Google Ads are local, and I positioned myself as the positioning that I got from that almost immediately shocked me. People just sort of assumed that we were the biggest, best web design company in the area. Almost overnight, it was like that positioning happened. And
Okay, that's really, really interesting. But you're saying you were a local guy. In other words, you did it specifically in your area so that people would connect with you on a local level as opposed to being just a random sort of nameless, faceless agency.
well, now we've worked with people who are getting clients all over the country using Google AdWords, and now we've started to expand some of our, on that side of business campaigns, for getting web design clients, to nationally and using the same strategies. But yeah, at that point I was focusing on local clients, and that was because I'm good with meeting the clients in person and that kind of thing.
Okay, that's really interesting. And so essentially, Google AdWords, you had a landing page set up. People wanted a let's say, in your location, let's go back there. People wanted a web designer. They'd Google web design. You would come up. They'd get to your landing page, and they'd call you and discuss services with you?
Yes, and to answer your previous question about getting big projects and everything.
Yeah.
The key with Google AdWords is that you're only paying when somebody actually clicks on those ads, right?
Right.
So what we want to do is we want to write the ads in such a way that those people that are looking for a small project don't click on it.
Right.
And the main thing that I do one of the main things that I do to make that happen is I actually put my starting price right in the ad.
Wow. All right, so obviously qualifying your leads heavily. But in other words, my point just I get it, and look, obviously it works. It's worked for you, and it works for many people. And look, it's Google AdWords. It's Google's. I'm sure their largest source of revenue by far. We all know every company on the planet, every big company uses Google AdWords. But I guess my question sort of was that when you hire a stranger, you generally don't hire. If I'm going to go to a top surgeon and I know it's not a perfect analogy for major surgery, I'm not going to Google it. Maybe nowadays people are, but I'm going to speak to others and I'm going to get a word of mouth referral. If I want a $500 web page, I'll go on Google AdWords and hire a designer that way. If I want a $5,000 or $10,000 web page, I would have thought that I'm going to ask around, or I'm going to go on Upwork or go somewhere where I can see reviews. That was sort of my point, is that it's more of like a very cold lead, even if you are qualifying your project fee ahead of time. You see what I'm saying?
I totally get that, and going in, that would have been my thought too. And I've just found that there are,
and it's not true.
I found that
that's awesome.
There are segments of the population certainly that they're going to get referrals and everything, and then there's people that I have had people click on my Google ad. They've actually clicked on it on their phone and clicked to call, and gave me their credit card for a digital marketing retainer on that first call in less than 15 minutes.
That's amazing. And I don't want to let it go unnoticed that you just gave such an incredible strategy you threw out there to qualify the leads and to limit the number of clicks to the people who are most appropriate, which is you put your fee, whatever your fee is. If somebody wants to charge $2,500 for a website, if they just put web design, web development, web coder on the ad, they're going to get people who want the $50 web page, and that's going to be hundreds, maybe thousands of clicks they're going to have to pay for, which go nowhere. If they write $2,500 projects and up in the ad, then right there they are knocking out hundreds or maybe thousands of wasted clicks.
That's exactly right. And when you're creating ads, you're always in the mindset of how can I get people to click on this, and that's totally the opposite thinking when you're doing Google AdWords.
Right, exactly. You don't want more clicks, right? When you have a radio commercial, you want the broadest possible audience, and with Google, it's the exact opposite. You want to narrow the amount of clicks, so it's a totally opposite strategy. Yeah, excellent. This is great stuff. Now, let me just be very blunt here. A copywriter, there's a huge range. I don't have to tell you this. It's same is true with web design and most of freelancing probably. There's a range of copywriters who get $5, $8 an hour to people who are getting $150 an hour. What would you say is the highest hourly rate reasonably that a copywriter could find projects on Google AdWords? In other words, if I'm a copywriter, which I am,
Okay.
and I wanted to advertise on Google AdWords, what would you think, or maybe you'll tell me the sky's the limit, but what would you think is a reasonable rate that that a copywriter could expect to find clients at targeting those clients on Google AdWords?
I wouldn't know enough about the sort of copywriting to say an hourly rate, but I think any hourly rate that would be reasonable in that industry, or anybody at any level in that industry, could use Google AdWords to get clients.
That's fair. In other words, I guess what I'm asking is if a premium. That's a good point. I should clarify the question. If a premium copywriter, I'm not talking about the super crazy giant copywriters, but if a premium copywriter charges $500 or $600 for a landing page, so do you think, and if they do that through networking, et cetera, other channels, do you think that's a reasonable amount that they could expect if they advertise on Google AdWords? I know you don't know exact numbers here, but I'm just sort of trying to get a picture so that people understand, the parameters.
Yeah, I think absolutely that would be something that you could do with Google AdWords. And I actually think AdWords is almost better when you're charging more, because you're able to afford more clicks. Like the higher value of the client or the higher value of the project, the more you can spend to get that new client. So it almost works better for bigger projects.
That's that's an unbelievable point, and it's crystallizing as we're talking. Because you obviously are a Google AdWords, you're the expert. There's millions and millions and millions of people out there. There's hundreds of millions using Google, maybe billions, and you just need a few to make a good living.
Exactly.
And if you just target the ad properly, which is probably the area. I mean, I could probably speak to you for hours and hours just about all the different strategies of Google AdWords, and obviously that maybe a different time, not today. But you're saying that the mistakes that most people probably make is that they're getting lots of clicks, but it's the wrong kind of traffic. Whereas if they know how to strategize properly and write the ads properly, then they can limit the amount of clicks, get the right kind of traffic, and make a killing.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And, we've worked with all kinds of clients as digital marketing clients, construction companies and people like that. And we've had people that are, construction companies that are trying to get multi-million-dollar jobs, and they're using AdWords to do that and getting leads all the time that way.
Wow. Okay. That's incredible. I mean, that's just mind-boggling. So that leads me sort of to my next point, which is if you're speaking to a freelancer who's just starting out, and there's a lot of competition out there, especially for the newbies, and freelance, let's say web design, which is your industry, a freelance web designer who's, let's assume, somebody who's good, has a couple of pieces in his portfolio already, his or her portfolio, and they're talented, and they say to you, okay, Joe, I'm ready. I've had successful clients. I know what I'm doing. What's the best channel for me right now, 2016, to find clients, freelancing clients, build my portfolio, and become a full-time freelancer? What's the answer?
If somebody has I guess I'll give you two answers. If somebody's prepared to spend money on Google AdWords, then I think that's probably the best channel. And by prepared to spend money on that, I like to sort of think about it like this. The best return on investment that you're going to get that I've found in sort of these sort of creative services space is a maximum of about 10 times what you spend. So if you spend $1, you're going to get a maximum of $10 return, and that's an amazing return on marketing, certainly.
Unbelievable.
But so I would ask somebody, what's the value of your client, and say the average value of their client is $2,000. Well, then they have to be comfortable spending at least $200 in order to get a client like that. So that sort of gives you some numbers to think about in terms of, can you afford to do it? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And I definitely would not recommend somebody doing AdWords if they're down to their last $100 or something, because you're going to have to test things, and you're going to have to talk to people on the phone and see if you're attracting the right kind of people and things like that. So you definitely want to be able to put some money into it to test things until you get it right.
That makes perfect sense.
And the one thing, Google AdWords is not going to make your sales cycle faster. So if your process is you send somebody a proposal and it's a few weeks till they accept it, then you're going to have to realize you're going to have to be spending on AdWords until those projects close.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It's not. Yeah, that makes it's not an instant type of thing, and I think freelancing in general is like that. But in other words, if somebody's on a freelancing site, so they can sort of submit proposals for free and talk to people, and then after a few weeks, or for a very low price at least, and then they'll get clients, and that's how the cycle will go. Whereas on AdWords, obviously, the leads will keep coming in, but then it'll take a bunch of weeks, and meanwhile, you're spending money on your campaign. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. But yeah, continue.
Yeah, if you're not at that point, if you're just starting out, then you need to go with either a no-cost or a low-cost marketing strategy, and a few of those would be prospecting on LinkedIn. We've worked with a lot of people who've had a lot of success, basically turning their LinkedIn profile into a sales letter with a call to action in their summary, and then going out on LinkedIn and connecting with people and getting clients that way.
Wow. So how exactly are they how specifically are they using LinkedIn to find clients?
Well, yeah, the first two things, you have to turn your profile into a sales letter that attracts those right people. So in your summary, you're describing who you help and how they can get a free consultation or free quote or anything like that. And then also saying that in your headline, rather than just saying, that the headline up there, usually people will use their position, like CEO of such and such company or freelancer or something like that. You want to change that into more of a tagline that describes who you help, like I help restaurants with digital marketing or something like that.
Right, that's an excellent point. And this actually, I saw somebody make this point recently, and I said, wow, it seems so sort of simple, after you hear it, but why didn't I think of that? Because we all do that. We fall into that sort of trap almost where we're using LinkedIn as, like you said, it's just your position. You're putting your position where, so you have this mini landing page here that you can actually use to grab people in and to stand out instead of just doing what everybody else is doing. My question though is how do you? My next sort of follow up is, but how are people bottom line going to find you on LinkedIn?
Well, yeah, there's actually the best way to do it. There's actually a browser plugin called Autopilot for LinkedIn that allows you to. You have to pay for it. I think it's maybe $50 or something like that. But it will actually go out and view profiles for you.
Wow, very cool.
And then when you view a profile, that other person sees that you viewed their profile, and they see your headline that says, I help such and such kind of people with such and such.
So that'll actually get them to click that. Oh, wow. This is great stuff. I've one more question because then we got to run, and I literally could talk to you all day because this is fascinating. And in light of what you said earlier, I almost know the answer that's coming, but I have to ask it. Google AdWords gets a bad rap. I speak to so many, and I see on blogs, and I speak to so many of my own personal clients and other business owners who say, well, Google AdWords, you pay so much for clicks, and very often you don't get enough in return. It could suck your money dry. And I've seen many, many people fail using Google AdWords. Maybe you don't have the same experience, or maybe you do, but assuming you do, why would you say that is, considering your enormous success you've gotten for yourself and for other clients, and the fact that you've really cracked the Google AdWords code?
Yeah, no, that's totally common. We have that all the time, and that's one of the difficulties we have in selling to digital marketing clients. And the reality is that Google wants to take your money, and the default settings in Google AdWords are totally opposite of what you should be doing. And if it's not set up right, it's just going to eat your money. We have one client that came to us had spent $10,000 on AdWords the previous month and hadn't even gotten one phone call. And
Wow.
We got him
Yeah, and it's not uncommon.
No, it's not common at all. And then once we set it up right, we got him multiple calls on the first day.
Wow.
Just because
that is awesome.
of setting it up right. So yeah, it just has to be done. It has to be done the right way.
And which essentially comes down to, what you were saying before. I mean, obviously this is much more complicated. I don't want to oversimplify it, but if you essentially, just if I could boil it down, you tell me if I'm right or wrong. If you can make your ad the type that A, attracts the people who you're looking to attract, and B, avoids or repels all the people that you don't want to attract, then you're optimizing and maximizing the ROI on your ads.
Yeah, that's a big piece of it. And another piece that a lot of people don't realize, and this sort of gets a little bit technical, but most people think if they go into AdWords and they pick keywords that they want to show up for, that their ads will only show up for those keywords.
Right.
By default, your ads will show up for all kinds of other keywords that Google thinks are related.
Ooh.
So
okay.
You might say you want to show up for web design company, but Google might show your ad for web design jobs, and so people who want a job at your company are clicking on the ad.
Right.
And so Google has what's called match types, where if you put brackets around the keyword when you enter the keyword into AdWords, or you put quotes around the ads, then that stops Google from choosing all those other keywords that it thinks are similar, and it forces Google to only show the ads for the keywords that you've actually picked. So that's a big, absolute must.
Amazing stuff. Joe, I knew this would be good. This was way, way, way better than I ever could have imagined. Not because, just because I didn't realize, all the different areas that we would cover in this short amount of time. I really appreciate it. I'll have you back anytime you want.
Awesome.
And again, what was the website that people can go to check it out?
Yeah, it's agencyaccelerator.guru.
Agencyaccelerator.guru. I mean, man, I can't tell you how valuable that is, even if it's just a fraction of everything we've covered. All right. Joe Kashurba, thank you very, very, very much. I really appreciate it, and hope to talk to you again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.